So first order of business is to review the draft minutes from the meeting of April 9th. Let me know if you guys have had an opportunity or whether we can go ahead and vote on the minutes.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
quite clearly, Chip.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I can't hear anybody. Can someone speak?
Is the
Sure.
volume up on yours?
I'm not hearing you. Sorry. Let me.
Hi, this is Phil.
I can hear everyone now.
Okay, it's on the City of Hudson Facebook page, but if you just give me your I knew that. No, so I'm gonna have somebody. I'm gonna have I'm gonna have somebody send you the link. What's the best email for you?
It's my name, BHRISTABELGOUGH@gmail.com.
Okay. Shaheem,
Yep.
could you forward that link to Christabel Goff at Gmail? Do you have her on your, or I can spell it out for you?
Spell it out, please.
CHRISTABELGOUGH at Gmail.
CHRISTABEL.
CHRISTABLGOUGH. Oh, EL, I'm sorry. CHRISTABEL. Gough, GOUGH at Gmail.
Okay.
That should do it.
Good. Do you think that's fixed for other people?
We're trying to, there's some interesting, whatever, bureaucratic firewall where Shaheem can't change the city website right now. He has to go through the city clerk, but we're working on it.
It would be today. Oh, okay, well, thanks for your help. I'll look at my email.
Okay, thanks, Christopher. All right, where were we? Has everybody had a chance to take a look at the minutes? I'm going to take that as a yes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting of April 9th? Anyone?
Motion.
Thank you very much. And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Miranda. All in favor? Aye.
Mhm.
Are any opposed? None. Minutes are approved. And one more time and every time, thank you so much, Rebecca. We have a good set of Cs of A, which are applications approved and found complete from the prior meeting. Would it help everybody if Rebecca shares the screen? Do you want to see the agenda? Or are you comfortable with me just going through the votes?
You see the list?
Yeah, Paul, I'm asking, would it help
Yeah.
everybody to be
I think so.
looking at the agenda screen while we vote?
Yes.
Okay.
I like looking at you, Phil, but, you know.
Other people have had that experience and many have run away. Rebecca, could I trouble you to share your screen and put the agenda up? Thanks very much. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. I was in Maine playing with the grandkids and I lost my voice. First up is 41-43 South Third Street, a sign. May I have a motion to approve C of A for that property
So
as
moved.
prepared by City Attorney Miranda?
Mhm.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? None. Approved. Thank you very much. 224 Warren Street, a sign. May I have a motion to approve 224 Warren Street? C of A. Anyone? Thank you, Miranda. May I have a second?
Sure. Hugh.
You. Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? None. 224 Warren Street is approved. 824 Union Street, a fence. Motion, please.
I make that motion.
Thank you, Paul. And a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Miranda, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? None. 824 Union Street is approved. 538 Warren Street. Motion, please. Anyone?
Motion.
Thank you very much. Hugh, may I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, Paul. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. I want to come back, I think, to 9 Willard Place, which we will in a minute. We'll just go through these others. 310 Warren Street, motion to approve. Anyone?
Sure. Hugh. Motion.
Thank you very much, Hugh. And a second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Paul. All in favor of 310 Warren Street? Aye. Are there any
Aye.
opposed? None. Approved. 221 Warren Street. Motion, please.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Paul. And a second, please.
Second.
Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Question for Attorney Polidoro. Should we be voting on 400 State, or should that not wait till after the public hearing?
Oh, that needs to wait until after the public hearing.
Thank you very much.
It was just a draft prepared in case the board was ready to consider it later today.
Understood and appreciate it. And I appreciate you
Bill?
catching some of the fill errors, which happily would not be, yes.
On 221 Warren Street, which we just approved, was there a contingency in that? Did they satisfy that contingency about the materials?
I'm not remembering. I'm going to defer that to Victoria.
Here, I'll pull it up.
I can also speak to that.
The contingency, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. The contingency that I had from the minutes and from the board's prior discussion was that the shingles shall match the existing dormer shingles on the, so there shingles on the new wood siding on the west side of the building shall match existing dormer shingles. That's where that
Okay.
was the condition in the C of A, but if you want to change it, we can do that.
No, I just wanted to make sure that we didn't have a contingency that we had.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Miranda.
Yeah.
Did we go through the motion on 221 or did we stop?
You did.
Did.
Aye.
25
We're
Union
good.
Street.
We're good to go forward on 221. State Street is we're going to come back to 25 Union Street. Motion to approve C of A for 25 Union.
I'll make that
Anyone?
motion.
Motion.
Thank you very much, Paul. And Hugh, you seconded. All in favor, please.
Aye.
Are there
Aye.
any opposed? Thank you. 201 Allen Street. Motion to approve C of A for 201 Allen Street. Anyone, please?
Hugh.
Hugh, thank you. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Miranda. All in favor of 201 Allen Street, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? None. Application approved, C of A approved, excuse me. And the address that manage to screw up regularly is 5 Willard's Place. And for some reason, it showed up as an 8 one time, and I keep on picking it up. The correct address is 5 Willard. Motion to approve 5 Willard Place, please.
Phil, are you sure that's 5 Willard? 5 Willard did have a fence application last month, that this month 8 Willard had the fence?
Well, we changed it back to 5. It could have been, we've been transposing 5 and 8 between myself and Victoria.
Well, let's see, hold on. I thought when I made Phil change it back because
I don't have that application right out in front of me, but I know that 8 Willard was a fence this month and 5 Willard was a fence last month. And I know or at the April 9th meeting, it did show up on the agenda as 5 Willard, but it was supposed to be 8 Willard.
okay, so I drafted the C of A for the wrong application then because, okay. What is 8 Willard looking for?
It's also a C of A for a fence. So that's probably where there's a confusion, because last month 5 Willard had a application for a C of A for a fence, and this month 8 Willard had the same. I mean, different fences, different properties, but 2 different applications for 2 different Willard Street properties.
I believe you,
That.
Chris.
So
Okay.
the one- 8 Willard was the one with the nice arch trellis.
And what was the type of,
there,
here, let me fix it.
was there an issue on that someone emailed us about after the meeting?
That I
No,
believe is
Fences
9
and
Willard.
things?
There's an
9.
issue at 9 Willard. We'll come to that,
I see.
Miranda.
Okay.
Okay, so I can fix 8 Willard. So it's for the installation of a fence. I'm
Right.
sorry. So Phil, you were right. I messed this one up. Okay.
Victoria,
Yeah?
it was so nice of you to acknowledge that and relieve Phil of being wrong.
Rebecca, would you mind sharing my screen for a moment?
Pardon?
I was asking if Rebecca if she would stop sharing so I can pull up the revised C of A. Because this one was not sent around to the board because obviously I just fixed it. Okay, let's make sure all the information is correct. It's 8 Willard. I don't know the application date on this one, so we'll have to fill that in because
Victoria,
yes.
this is Craig.
Hi,
The addresses should be 8 Willard Place. The owner's name should be Wesley Golby, I believe. And that was emailed out to everybody on 4/7/21.
Okay. Okay, and then so installation of a fence in accordance with the specifications with no conditions.
Good.
Okay,
Are we good? Thanks so much, Victoria. Okay, so motion to approve 8 Willard Place, not 5, and we'll make the corrections. Anyone make that motion?
So moved.
Thank you very much, Miranda. And a second, please.
Okay.
You all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Applications approved. I guess while we're here and public folks may be coming in, we should go to 9 Willard. I think most of you got a letter forwarded from me. I think you did, or directly from Bill Hurst, attorney for 10 Willard. Bill, do you want to comment on why you raised an objection?
Sure. Thank you, Chairman Foreman. So my name is Bill Hurst, and I'm appearing on behalf of Nicholas Levin, who is the owner of number 10 Willard Place, which is immediately adjacent to number 9 Willard Place. As I'm sure all of you know, those are sort of companion buildings. They look very much the same. First of all, let me apologize for coming in hot late on a Thursday afternoon. Just understand that the plans for the C of A application hit my desk after 4 p.m. yesterday. So this was the first that we saw their fullest extent and what was actually being proposed and what was before the commission. That is not for lack of trying, as you may have noticed in my submissions of yesterday. Mr. Levin has been inquiring of his neighbor since February of this year, cordially, politely, asking him to disclose his development plans because these properties are, as I'll get into in a moment, highly interconnected. They are interconnected by a series of mutual easements. They're interconnected by a series of mutual restrictions and covenants. And they're interconnected by covenants and restrictions that were imposed in the first instance by the city of Hudson. And so while I understand that municipal boards and commissions do not typically become embroiled in or involved in the interpretation and application of private easements, this case strikes me as completely different. The restrictions at issue and the restrictions that we submit are violated by the plans currently before the board, were imposed in the first instance by the city of Hudson, and were intended to be forever binding on the property owners. So this is quite a bit more than just a dispute over private easements, it seems to me. I did see in the C of A application materials on page 2 that there is a paragraph that asks the applicant to bring before the commission any other information or research that might bear on the commission's decision, including on the historic character of the properties at issue. And apart from some passing notes, note 7 and note 10 on the plans themselves, it wasn't clear to me if the board had been provided with any of the deed and title history affecting these properties, which again goes directly to the alterations that are the subject of the application. So I can get into, well, I might as well just run you through the sum and substance of my submissions last night. You have the documents, you can certainly look at them for yourselves. But what the points that we wanted to make was that these parcels that are now number 9 and 10 began as one unified parcel. That parcel was conveyed to Leeton Inc. and Eric Galloway many years ago as a single parcel. At that time, those parcels did not include the 163 square foot, what I'll generally refer to as the embankment area in front of those two parcels now. And that is what I understand is at least proposed to be flattened in some respects, a retaining wall installed, and used for parking under the C of A application, as I understand it. And so Leeton Inc. and Mr. Galloway petitioned the city to acquire that 163-acre parcel. At the time, and it's not clear exactly when this began, I believe it was Mr. Christensen had asserted that some or all of those lands were city parkland that could not be conveyed without legislative approval. And so there were issues about the nature and characteristics of the embankment area and the cul-de-sac itself. That litigation went on its own track for a while and was eventually dismissed. I just throw it out there as just a bit of context for the properties we're dealing with.
May I?
In August of 2000.
Could you share your screen so we can kind of follow along with what you're talking about?
Yes.
We have a map or something to help.
Well, let me see what I've got here. Okay, I'm going to try to share right now. You know, it's hard to share a survey map in the form that we've got it. Okay. All right, so if you can see my screen right now and you see the yellow highlighted area, that is the 163 square foot parcel that was appended in 2004 to the parcel I'm circling right now, which is currently number 9 Willard Place. Okay, so this is a 2004 map by Robert Eilenberg. And so what happened is in 2004, Leeton and Galloway petitioned the city to convey that parcel to them. And the city did so. The city did so, as you can see, I'm showing you right now the deed from the city of Hudson to Leeton relative to the 163 acre parcel, which was made subject to these 3 restrictive covenants, which you can see shall run with the land and be forever binding on the owner of the premises. One of those conditions is that other than construction of a walkway on the premises, the property, meaning the 163 square foot parcel, shall remain forever green. And you can see that this deed is executed pursuant to a resolution of the Common Council dated August 17, 2004. And so we have that resolution. And I've just clicked that up here. And you can see there was some discussion about this 163 acre parcel. There's some discussion about Mr. Christensen's objections. And then there is a question from Alderman Keneally about this forever green requirement. And he asks, as you can see for yourself, he asked President Mike Vertitas at the time whether the conveyance, the forever green requirement, would prohibit anything other than the stairway as stipulated. President Vertitas answers in the affirmative, and he says, yes, the forever green requirement was meant to prohibit any development of the 163 square foot parcel other than the stairs. And those stairs are important as we move through the deed and title chain. And so what happens is this deed is conveyed from the city to Leeton in 2004, and that 163 acre parcel is appended to what is now number 9 Willard Place. It becomes a part of number 9 Willard Place. It is, however, still subject to the covenants and restrictions the city imposed on the grant, which are forever binding. And so what happens next is Leeton and Galloway begin to subdivide and convey out the parcel that is now number 9 and number 10 Willard Place. And so the conveyances start with the parcel we know now as number 9. And you can see on my screen, 18 May 2005, Leeton and Galloway to Hickey. This is again for number 9. This is in the chain of title for the applicant's parcel.
I'm running up for a Zoom meeting.
Sorry, I could not hear that if that was directed to me. Okay, as you can see, this first deed out from the common grantor, Leeton and Galloway, describes now we've got parcel A, which is the main parcel where the house sits. We've got parcel B, which is the 163 square foot parcel in the front, the triangular piece conveyed pursuant to the resolution of the City Council from August 17, 2004. This deed is made expressly subject to an easement and right-of-way for pedestrian ingress in, over, and upon parcel B in order to use the walkway. Now, at the same time, or shortly thereafter, Leeton and Mr. Galloway conveyed what is now number 10 Willard Place to another purchaser, Mr. Walker. And let's see if I can get to that one real quickly.
So are you saying that both of those were part of one parcel originally, 9 and 10?
Yes, 9 and 10 were a single parcel. They were at that time referred to as parcel 3, which was became number 10, and parcel 4, which became number 9. Those parcels were later split or subdivided in some way to create the 2 independent tax parcels we have today, which are number 9 and number 10. That original unified parcel did not include the 163 square foot, what I refer to as the embankment area, the place where the stone steps currently exist.
Mm-hmm.
That parcel was conveyed separately by the city, subject to the forever green requirement and the covenants and restrictions, and also subject to an easement that permits the owners of number 10 to access and use those stone steps. And as to those,
was the extra lot merged with lot 9 and 10 before it was split, or
just lot 10. One of the conditions of the original grant was that the 163 square foot parcel would be joined with what was then parcel 4, what is now number 9. So it sort of, by operation of the conveyance, was immediately appended to the front of what's now number 9, but carrying with it the restrictions and covenants that the city had imposed. And so now we've got this deed. Again, we have common grantors, Leeton and Galloway. They convey number 9 to Mr. Hickey, subject to this easement for access to the stairway. They then convey what became number 10 to Kevin Walker. And that deed is in my client's chain of title, contains this language that's highlighted on your screen right now. It is grant together with the easement. And if you look at how that 163, how the original grantors described that 163 acre parcel, it is described as being conveyed to the common grantors for construction of steps for number 10 Willard Place. And so read together, you have an easement that gets my client from his boundary line separating 9 and 10 to the steps, and an easement allowing him to use those steps to access the cul-de-sac. And all of these restrictions are of record in the parties' respective chains of title. It is clear that my client currently has, and has always had, not just my client, I mean, whoever the owner of number 10 Willard Place is, has an abiding perpetual easement over the embankment area to the steps that were constructed for the benefit of number 10 Willard Place. As I understand the plans currently before this commission, that embankment is to be flattened in significant respect, adorned with various retaining walls, and converted into parking for number 9 Willard Place. And on that point, let me note that if you look at these deeds, the parking for these two parcels is behind the buildings in a single driveway with mutual easements allowing each property owner to use that driveway. That clearly bespeaks of an intent to hide the parking behind the buildings and not have it in the parkland area or quasi-parkland area or park-like area in the front half, which is what's being proposed now. And so from our perspective, what's being proposed is a fundamental reshaping and termination of the intent of these properties in their original grants, and would effectively terminate these easements and covenants and restrictions that the city itself insisted be proposed. And so before we even get to whether these proposed alterations are compatible with the historic district or compatible with surrounding properties or can be approved under a certificate of appropriateness process, you know, I think this is critical information for this commission to have before it, because clearly the intent of all of this was to preserve and protect the historic character of the cul-de-sac, to preserve and protect the integrity and green space in front of these two buildings, which acted as a buffer to the cul-de-sac, and to preserve and protect the sort of nice natural quality of the area. And so that, it seems to me, is all highly critical information to this commission's consideration, should have been provided before according to the application instructions. And so we felt that it was imperative to get this information before the commission, before it rendered a decision. I wish that, you know, my client did not receive notice of a public hearing. I don't know if you've had a public hearing on this matter or not. But again, you know, this was all a complete mystery to my client and I. We saw the agenda item at the last meeting. My client began making inquiries to try and get some of the materials, and Mr. Foreman was justifiably away and enjoying his time and catching up with family, as, you know, many of us are trying to do these days. So, I mean, you know, we're not complaining about that, but, you know, it seems to me this information should have been before the commission from the outset. It seems to me this information is highly material to the determination, and it seems to me that this information should lead to the denial of the certificate of appropriateness application.
Bill,
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
who's speaking?
John,
Oh, go ahead, John. Thank you.
is what was presented to us 2 weeks ago include this? By the way, to the attorney's point, to Mr. Hurst's point, we may not have jurisdiction to even approve this, but was parking presented to us, front of the house parking presented to us? It was not.
It wasn't that I'm aware of, but is the applicant here and can they speak? Mr. Hurst, can you stop sharing?
Yeah, I was actually looking for the application to show you the parking, but yeah, let me stop sharing. There we go.
I mean,
To appear for the applicant, I frankly have been pulled on this last minute. I can say that I don't think that this is the forum for this discussion. I don't think that This is something that the planning board would weigh. I can show you the survey that my client has for this property. We also have a title report for this. I do not have all of the information that the neighboring parcel's attorney has presented today. Unfortunately, this came in very last minute, despite the fact that we had the meeting last week on this. But I do not think this would fall within the purview of this board.
Crystal, this is Phil. I think that everyone's interest would be best served if this be it's a stupid expression taken offline, but there's content here which is not within the purview of this commission. I need a little time to go back to the application and see if any of this discussion impacts. And I would hope that there's some way that you and Mr. Hurst can get together, but that's up to you, and come to a resolution. My suggestion to everyone and to the commission is that we defer on number 9 Willard Place until the next meeting. I need some more information to understand exactly how this thing impacts or not. And I would love for the representatives from 9 and 10 to help us out and come back with a solution that we can approve without issues. What do you think, fellow commissioners?
I agree, Phil.
I agree.
think
We shouldn't vote on that.
Okay.
this is a
I agree.
dispute between the parties that really has nothing to do with us. It needs to
Okay.
be
No,
resolved.
and
before
and
we
you
can
know,
approve.
it happens. So to both Bill and Crystal, thank you so much for coming to us today. We do want to help. This is something though that's not quite appropriate for us. So I'm hoping that you guys are able to work together. And just for the record, we're gonna defer a review of number 9 until the next meeting, at which point I think we can be better informed. So thank you.
I haven't had a chance to go through the submission that we received yesterday evening. Just some items real quick. Off-street parking is mentioned in the application, although it wasn't presented to the board as part of the application at the last meeting, as far as I remember. Generally, these sorts of restrictions and covenants between neighbors are not within the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission. It's a neighbor issue, not a city issue. However, if the city did impose a restriction on the use of the property, then the HPC should abide by the city's restriction if it was a city restriction. So I think we all will have to take another look at what's happening here and reevaluate.
Terrific.
Thanks.
Terrific. So with the commission's approval, I'd like to close discussion on this. We're going to defer it for 2 weeks to the next meeting, and we can be better informed. And I hope folks representing the different properties can come to a good solution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
Now, what did we skip? What did we not get done? We didn't get done our public hearing. Basically. So we can close this part of our, well, we can actually come back to, I think we've got a quick sign application. I'd like to let that guy get done and move on. There's a C of A application that somewhere between Craig and I didn't make the folder for this meeting. It's just a sign, I hope a simple sign. Is anyone here from 322 Warren Street?
422?
I'll take that.
Should
Or
be
no,
522.
522, sorry, 522.
522 Warren.
You guys pick the preferred one. I'll go with 522.
522.
Who's speaking for that property?
This is Tom from Next Gen Signs.
Hey, Tom,
How
can
you
you,
doing today?
would you be able to share your screen and tell us about your sign?
Yes. Let's see. I never did this before, so stick with me. So here's the sign. It's going to be a ACM composite panel with raised PVC painted letters. It's going to be a facade sign mounted to the facade. I will bring up the other picture. How do you change pictures? So share screen. Share. So here's the front of the building. It's going to be mounted to the facade there, just between those two windows. The sign ends up being 9 square feet, which we are under the allowable square footage. And that would be it.
That was quick.
It's a
Could
simple
you-
sign. It's black and white. There's nothing fancy on it. If you want to see it again, I can pull it back up.
Sure, if you would, please.
Sure.
Cool. Okay. I assume that the obviously you wouldn't be here if there was an issue with code enforcement or any of that. So commissioners, any questions or comments on this? Not so much.
No.
May I have a motion to find the application complete and waive a public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Paul. And a second,
Second.
please. Thank you very much, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Application is found complete. May I have a motion to approve the application and thereby request city attorney to prepare, a certificate of appropriateness?
I make that
Anyone?
motion.
Thank you, Paul. And a second, please. Thank you, Hugh. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Application is approved. You will have your C of A in 2 weeks.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for coming today.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Phil, this is Craig. Can I interrupt real quick?
Of course.
On your approvals on the list of C of As I got in front of me, did 4143 South Third get approved, the sign?
Yes.
749 Columbia?
I don't have it.
It's on the agenda.
I believe they were a no-show at the last.
They were a
meeting.
no-show in the last meeting, Craig.
Okay, that was the one I talked to you about yesterday. So that did not get reviewed.
No, it has not been reviewed at all.
I will let them know. And then 224 Warren Street.
224 Warren Street sign was approved, Craig.
9 Willard's on hold. And then the last two was 542 Warren and 227 Warren.
I-42 had been approved back in February with the condition that any lighting under the canopy had to come back in for review. They decided not to put lighting under the canopy, so I
So
didn't
that-
think there was anything
that's
for the
removed.
board to do.
All right, so that's removed.
Right. So there's no action on 542 and 522. We just voted on.
What about 227 Warren?
I don't have a 227. I got a 221.
It's on the list for certificate of appropriateness that I got.
I don't have it. 227?
I don't have it either, Craig.
All right, I don't know why. It was on the list for the April 9th agenda.
Have we seen the application?
And it was submitted. Again, that was emailed on April 7th. All right, let me find out what happened with that.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Alrighty. Thanks so much, Craig. Good stuff. So we have an opportunity now to open our public hearing for a bit. And I believe that Walter Chatham will be presenting materials as regards 400 State Street.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, Walter. Thank you.
May I share my screen?
Please do.
Okay, thank you. Oh dear.
Take your time.
There it is. Great. Okay, so let me just go to full screen. Or not. All right. Can everyone see this?
Not so much.
Not so much. Okay. Maybe I did something wrong. So I'm going to stop my screen sharing and start again. Here.
You got it? Something
Okay.
anyway.
All right. We're making progress here. How about now? Is there a picture of a building in front of you?
Yes.
It looks very much like a building.
Oh boy. Oh boy. All right. We're on a roll. So this is an image that I think everybody is familiar with. Galvan uses it as their logo, and it's been referenced. This is the famous 12/12 image of the building. And it's a lovely image. I think it's fantastic. It is not original to the building. It's an 1830s image, and the use of the building had changed from an almshouse to what they call a lunatic asylum. I think we'd use a kinder term today. But in the contention of the group that I represent, which I share, this window pattern is frighteningly institutional and inappropriate historically to this building originally. And I know I have to be prepared to defend that. So here's the other extant evidence here. I think my eyesight isn't that good and the picture is blurry. I think this is 2/2 windows shown, you know, again, behind a porch that was obviously added, quite lovely. And some, I think those are chestnut trees. You know, gorgeous image of the building showing it as a residential use. So again, the use has evolved over time and the windows have changed. And so, you know, I could go into one of my like super long lectures about windows, but I'll save that for another day. Let's talk about where this building, the idea of this building comes from as a mental picture. It originates in Georgian England. And because they had the benefit of empire, they could afford to build a building like this, which is at the height of fashion. You know, this happens to be at Cambridge, but it could be anywhere in England in the 1700s. This is at Cambridge. Very clearly shows 9/9 windows. Notice that they're squares within squares. Everything's quite well thought out. And I would just add that this was kind of a big deal because glass technology was evolving and they went from a very brittle, thin product that they couldn't make in large sheets. They were beginning to understand how to manipulate glass so you could make a bigger window. And so Chatham says that windows are based on how big a glass sheet you can make historically. People always put in the biggest glass they could. And today, from a historical preservation standpoint, it's a disaster because you get single glaze over single glaze or horizontal strip. So anyway, this is what happens. This is Ireland in the 18th century still, but later. And you can see the fancy style from the headquarters of the empire has now made it this far, 9/9, beautiful building, but very utilitarian, very similar to our building. But, you know, look at the doorway, look at some of the improvements. You can see there's an attempt to be very upscale, very fashionable here. So how does this get to the colonies? This is a house I saw this weekend in West Virginia when I visited my father-in-law. Same period as our building here in Hudson that we're talking about. Limestone, coincidentally, 9/9 windows. Unfortunately, this has the storm panels over it, so it looks like the frames are very thick, but if you remove those, these are very beautiful, very delicate 9/9 windows on the ground floor, and then we're appropriate above 6/6. So, you know, I think one can argue a lot of different things. I don't believe that, whoops, sorry. I don't know how to make that go away. I don't believe that this is the way that this building was intended to appear. I think this is a very much a 19th century, late 19th century look. And, you know, referencing the fanlight window, which several people have said keep, I think you can make a good case that it shouldn't be 2/2. So what we did, and I apologize, I don't know how to make that go away. Maybe I can move it. All right, we'll just ignore that. So you see, this is the building as it now exists. It has the 2/2 windows, the fan light, and the existing kind of French doors that I think were added at some point when it became a residence. This is what it looks like with 4/4 windows. You can see it starts to get more in scale with the fan light, more in scale with the building. I put a person on the porch so you can see it. This is what it looks like with 6/6. This would be the conventional thing in a historical context. People would say 6/6 was the correct thing. I think in this case, this is not correct. And again, I'd reference the fan light, windows, and some other details in the building and the scale of the stone itself. Okay, so now you get to 9/9. I don't know. The Goldilocks proposition, I think this is just right. The owner of the building thinks this is just right. I know there's a lot of different opinion. If you look at the figure on the ground, the relationship of that person to the size of the windows and so forth, I think it starts to make a very good case. And then finally, going a little further, 12/12, I think this makes a case that it's prison-like, that this is a very inappropriate look and feel for this building. Indeed, it looks like an asylum. So I believe that is the extent of my presentation. I have the original application if you want to discuss that. But, you know, we also, I would just say, would like to do authentic divided light, so not insulated glass. We would do energy adjustments some other way. So the intention would be to get this as close to looking like an early 19th century original building as possible. And I rest my case. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Walter. Folks? I think,
Just,
go ahead, Jim.
just a point of order here for the public hearing. Are we going to hear from the public first, or are the members going to speak? What's our
Your point of order is well taken. I got lost in my own thoughts following Walter's presentation, of course. This is still public time, not our time. Thanks very much, Chip. So, ladies and gentlemen of the public. I'm
Has the
hearing.
public made it to the public hearing? Maybe that's another question.
Ronald is muted.
Ronald is muted, but he has his hand up. Ronald, unmute.
I have unmuted. Actually, it is Matt who wants to ask a question.
I just had a question of clarification. Now, on the plans, it said it would be double pane, glass. So now am I to understand that you're doing a single pane to make it more historic?
That is correct. I think that's the intention, to try and go with a single pane.
Yeah, I think that I think that would really make the building shine and look the way it, look like a historic building. I think that's a good idea. Thank you.
And then I also have a question, just as a point of clarification. What is being proposed will not restore the building to any actual state it was ever in the past. In terms of window configuration.
I'm not being smart here, but the question is a good one. We have evidence of what the building looked like in the 1830s and what the building looked like in the 1860s, and of course what it looks like today. To my knowledge, there is no evidence of what the building looked like when it was built in 1818, and the purpose of my presentation building up to this was to say that in fashionable colonial, even recently freed colonial America, the 9/9 window would still be very popular. And since you've given me the opportunity to say this, just like today, you guys fight it when someone goes down to Home Depot and says, I want to use this window, it's readily available. 2/2s were the big thing when those 2/2s were put in. I don't see a lot of evidence for 12/12s in a building with window openings of this size. I've seen plenty of elegant 12/12 buildings with windows twice this size. So I just think a number of factors lead it to be possible. And I know we've already had disagreements about other speculations, but my direct answer is there is no evidence of what it looks like in 1818. So I'm making a supposition.
Okay, well, I'm just coming from the viewpoint which says you need not necessarily want to restore a building to its original state. You might want to restore it to another historical state. And it can be argued, you know, which period you're going back to or which point in the house's history you're going back to. But I just wanted to make my perspective on that clear.
Fair point.
Thank
you. Any other folks from the public who wish to comment? If there are none,
Wait.
please. Carol?
Yes, I'm sorry. I typically try not to comment in these public hearings, but this proposal is, I think, I'm sorry. This proposal is inappropriate. This is making a fantasy period for the building. There is no reason to believe that the building, as it was as a lunatic asylum, was altered substantively from what it was when it was an almshouse. I mean, an almshouse is not, really one of the most memorable things about this building is that it was always sort of a kind of low-end institutional building, and it was only during the period that it was the home of George Power that it became dressed up and more elegant. But its beginnings were quite humble, and I doubt that I truly doubt that when it became the almshouse, they replaced the windows. I mean, they didn't do things like that in the 19th century. So I think we're really looking at a kind of fantasy design for this building instead of looking at its history and trying to determine which is the period of significance that we want to go for. Also, I question the idea of replacing all the windows in a building that really needs some significant masonry repair. When the building was owned by the library, and we had a very reputable preservation architect plan out the phasing of the restoration, window replacement, except for the fan light, which was replaced because it would have, a hopeful effect to replace what had been a black painted piece of plywood in that opening. Aside from that, which was, determined to be, the area around it was determined to be not out of true, so we could replace that. What needed to come first was masonry repair and putting new windows in a building that, sadly, if you look at the building, some of the windows are all, like crooked. So this just is, in terms of a serious attempt to restore the building, this is not appropriate phasing to replace the windows at this time. And I don't think that the current owner has really considered period of significance in the building, for the building, and is really trying to impose his taste on the building. So that is my statement.
My name is Christabel Goff. I'm experiencing technical difficulties with getting to speak at the hearing of the Preservation Commission.
We can hear you, Christabel.
You can, marvelous.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. I won't tell you about my computer troubles. I had a question. Do I understand that these windows are going to be single glazed or double glazed? Because that will affect the Munton dimensions. If despite the fact that they are real Muntons, if there are 2 panes of glass for insulation, the Muntons will be thicker, and that will affect how the configuration is perceived, so that you should consider that when you're deciding on the configuration, for which there are several different arguments. I just wanted to make that point. Unless these are single glazed custom windows, the Muntons are going to be hugely thicker than any historic original. Thank you.
Thanks, Christabel. Any other folks for public comment? May I have a motion then to end the public hearing period and go back to our regular meeting? Anyone?
I make that motion.
Thank you very much,
Second.
Paul. And second, John. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. We're back in our regular meeting, and I need your help thinking through what we want to do in terms. Well, first of all, Walter, is there stuff you want to comment on that came out of the public hearing?
Yes, I'd like to say several things. I understand this is an emotional issue for people. And I have no intention of stepping on anyone's toes or hurting anybody's feelings, but I think a lot of people don't understand how difficult it is to preserve these buildings and how much of an additional burden the sequencing of permissions creates. Because in order to do what was just suggested by Carol, we are going to have to know what windows we're putting in. We've already done a masonry repair on the building. The facade has been stabilized. I don't know if anybody's noticed that. The facade's in actually pretty good shape, except where it's coming down because the interior structure is still pulling down in places. The wood structure is pressuring the facade. We need to get various permissions, but this commission is the first stop. And then in addressing repairs, I would say that we are permitted under the building code and under your code to make repairs in like kind. So we've already demonstrated we have the capability to repair a fine masonry, in this case limestone wall, and to set windows in it. So we just need the opportunity to pull all of our permissions together in an orderly fashion so we can do it. But throwing difficult sequencing problems aside, I would say that these are by choice going to be single glazed windows. The fewer Muntons, in a way, the better, because even with the best of intentions, today's Muntons are not the beautiful pencil things that they did in Georgian England and even in the colonies in the 18th century. So I think, having said that, I'd like to address the fantasy question. I think it's a fantasy to assume that an engraving is the last word on what a building was like. And I use my, I have to say, considerable historical background, understanding, starting in my teens as a restoration architect, working through old buildings, looking at physical evidence and finding the verge boards here, a piece of the window there. Of course, we make suppositions, but I've done a lot of research, and the research leads me to believe that a building like this, given the size of openings, would have 9/9 windows. Now, that's just not a Walter wants that opinion. That's many, many hours of research, consulting with people. So please bring facts to me that say, you know what, your supposition is stupid, and here's why. It's very difficult to continually defend things in a climate where somebody can say, here's an engraving, make it look like the engraving, here's a photograph. That's not preservation. That is attempting to freeze a moment that was already frozen for the record in time. And the last thing I'd like to say is, by the time we replace these windows at the rate we're going to renovate the building, it will be time to replace them again. And in fact, the code officer says we cannot put plywood. The windows are hot, they have asbestos in them, they have to come out. So if you want to preserve this building, please approve the windows so we can move forward with the rest of the program. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Walter. So as I understand it, the asbestos remediation will be part of this process.
This is the last thing remaining. We have to take these windows out to do anything else. And the code officer will confirm that we're not permitted to plywood them up. And I understand that and appreciate that. So we're simply trying to do the best we can to comply with everybody's somewhat conflicting requirements.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Bill, can I just comment on something?
Sure.
On behalf of the code officer and the code department and the city code, the reason for not allowing the plywood or to remove the windows is because you need a certificate of appropriateness to remove the windows and replace them. So I just want to clarify that, and that was the reasoning for it. We didn't want the windows to be removed and then the plywood be there until you got your approval.
That's what I was trying to say. Thank you, Craig.
I wanted to clarify it because that's not how it sounded. It sounded like I was restricting you from moving forward.
No, sir, I was saying that it's not to code. I meant you passed that on to me, not that that was your.
Okay. Walter, just so everybody's quite clear, what you are proposing or asking us to approve at this point is 9/9 windows.
Well,
of the quality you described, and best efforts, which I'm assuming will be successful, to preserve and restore the fan lights.
yes, and please consider the possibility that we could also restore the opening, which I agree with Carol, was original. They didn't change the opening when they made it a lunatic asylum. There was an arched opening with a lovely little fan light. We'd like permission to do that. And then if you'd like, we can come forward with detailed drawings of that. You know, if we have permission in concept, we would then go ahead and do details and present them to you.
Okay, so say it again. What are you asking us? Because we're not actually approving a final application.
No.
You were asking that the commission give you an indication on the 9/9?
Did 9/9, we'd, you know, as soon as possible, we'd like that. But also this drawing here, this particular one, shows the original, we believe, condition of the door, which was an arched opening, and it does appear in that 1830s engraving, and it had a fan light in it and a, you know, 6-panel Georgian door. So single door. So that's, you know, as opposed to that opening which exists now. You know, at current, there's a kind of double door, French door thing with a not very good surround.
Okay. So when we take a next step on this, the restoration of the door and the surround and so on will be part of that application.
Yes.
Okay. Folks?
Can you go back to the 1830 drawing, please?
One of the things that's interesting about this 1830 drawing, and Miranda, I don't want to step on your speaking if you were about to speak, but since this is up, it's interesting to consider the sill height of the primary first floor windows that are flanking the front door. The sills of these windows appear to be at more or less the same height as the windows in the hyphens and the flanking wings. It appears as though then in the conversion of this in the later 19th century to the Powers residence, that those sills then were lowered as they are right here, lowered as was the current period which was very popular at that period. And we saw the two-story porch across the front of this building, that in fact, these 4 windows flanking the front door were then, when it was converted to a residence, were used as doors from those parlors to go out to the porch. This change of the opening obviously is significant. It does, of course, tell the history of the building. And I think that an interesting question before the commission is, just as we've been talking about going back to what period of history is appropriate for this building. And I'm not suggesting one way or the other. It's just that it looks like these 4 windows have 2 significant periods of architectural design, one of the residence and one as the institution. I think when we look at this drawing, which is the 9/9, and Walter, I have this question for you. It appears as though this drawing which you have prepared showing us the 9/9 shows those window sills at something other than at the floor when they were used as doors, not as high as when they were and during the period of time when it was an institution, but we're somewhere in between. And if you look back at your 21st century photograph of the condition today, everyone remembering where these sills are, here we can see that those sills are in fact at the floor of the threshold of the front door. So I think it's a curious, Walter, I'm wondering why it appears as though you've positioned the sill somewhere between the institutional sill and the residential sill.
So an excellent question, Chip. Originally, when this was, as you say, a porch, there was a floor right here, right? And they took that away, and I'm not sure what happened, but you see there's been some difficulty here. This is just some area that, in my opinion, we should come up a little bit, just enough to kind of make a nice piece of masonry there that's reinforced and keep these openings more or less as they are, slightly reduced. But again, whatever you guys want, whatever you think is appropriate.
I think if you would now go back to your 9/9 drawing, I think that this is the 9/9 drawing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is 9/9. So you see, right. We've reintroduced a lintel, by the way, in here, and slightly increased this just to give the stone some stuff, and
yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Are there existing flat arches over the other basement windows in the hyphens and flankers? I can't. Yeah, it
it's
looks
several different conditions, but my answer is essentially yes.
Yeah, it looks like there may be
Just
some
what you
stone, some
said.
brick.
Sorry?
It looks like maybe I'm looking at the 21st century photograph.
That's what I'm showing. Yeah, but you see their original, like over here, there's a kind of painted thing that looks like the original lintel, if you see where my cursor is.
I do.
And then over here, it's been filled in with brick.
Yeah.
And then I'm very often bad at expressing my thoughts, but what I'm trying to say is this was altered when they did the porch and they took out the lintel. And so we would put the lintel back in and raise the sill enough so that
Understood. Yeah, I understand. Now if you would go back to your 9/9 with the intermediate sills in their position. If looking at this drawing, it appears as though the second floor windows of the main block of the house of the building are the same vertical dimension as those in the hyphen and the hyphens and the wings. Is that, does that comport with your measurements? Do you think that these are the same?
Well, let me go back to the photograph. Sorry. You know, to my knowledge, that window is the same as that window and that window. This has been altered, but you see that window, and that window are the same. Now, to Carol's point, if you want it to look more like an institution, by all means, make the ground floor windows of the main block the same as all the other windows. You know, that's classic institution.
Sure, I understand that, and that's kind of what it appears to be like in that sketch etching. However, did you take field measurements to know that the first floor windows of the hyphen, in fact, are the same as the second floor?
If I did, I can't specifically say which windows and where.
Yeah.
You know, there's been, what we're gonna do is, if this board ever gets around to saying, okay, you can do some sort of windows, we're gonna get a window company, hopefully Marvin, to give us a quotation. And then they're going to have a contractor, we're gonna have a contractor field measure and get an actual order together. Again, speaking of sequencing, to be honest, Chip, I want to get a direction before I spend 100 hours. You know, in other words, if I'm going to change this window opening, I'd like to know from this board now.
Yeah.
Change the window opening.
Let me offer something that may be a way for us to move forward with this that would work for you. I think I'm hearing from the public, and I expect that the commission agrees, that having a single pane glass is important, and that part of the original likely architectural design of the 1880s, or even toward the mid of the 19th century, having a very thin mullion is, I think, desirable. I think when we look at the, I think that the first floor center windows flanking the entry hall, the entry door, I think that this is the most unresolved issue that we have regarding window replacement. I think the exact height of them is something that should be considered. And I think that the exact mullion pattern of the second floor and the third floor windows, where we have and the undisturbed first floor windows of the hyphen, I think knowing precisely what those are as you proceed through your sequence, I think that the I think there we can find that solution to the mullion pattern and the exact size. I would like for you to turn back, if you would, to your 9/9 elevation of the front. And I don't know, is it possible for you to zoom in on the main body of the first floor so we can see that a little more clearly? Thank you. And if you could move that over a little bit, that would be great too. But one of the things that I think is problematic with this is, and it's particularly evident in this drawing on the second and the third floor, is that the windows are not rectilinear in a vertical manner, the individual panes. The panes are horizontal in their proportion. It's more accentuated on the third floor than it is on the second. the first floor windows that you have in this drawing do show a verticality for the window pane. But I think that when these subdivisions of 9/9 or 6/9 or whatever, or 12/12, when the glass pane becomes horizontal and not vertical, I think that becomes problematic for.
Honestly, I'm so sorry. I'm not disagreeing with you. Admittedly, my drafting skills may lack finesse, but these are square panes. They're not horizontal. I would never do a horizontal pane. ever.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just responding to what it looks like in your drawing here. And if you go to your window schedule A600, it looks as if the windows are also horizontal rather than rectilinear. So if your drafting skills need to be sharpened a little bit and the exact dimensions of the windows need to be taken and considered, I think that the commission could consider the mullion pattern. I think that the commission would probably be supportive of approving the concept of replacing the windows. I think the 2/2s, obviously, the renovations that were done during the period of its conversion to a residence, I would love to hear discussion from the other commission members about what they think about this, but I think that with this particular building, restoring it to its residential use is not as, it's just not as desirable as restoring it to its more institutional use, if you will. So I would be supportive myself of removing the 2/2 windows, the Victorian, the later 19th century work that's been inserted, and considering an earlier mullion pattern. I'm not convinced that the 6/6 of the third floor or the 9/9 of the second floor, which you are showing, I'm not sure that that's the right place to be. But since we don't have really accurate drawings about what the dimensions of those windows are, I don't feel comfortable saying, oh yeah, that ought to be a 6/6, or yeah, that ought to be a 9/9. So those are my thoughts.
Hey, Chip.
Yes.
I'm totally sympathetic with what you're saying, but the Walter has already confessed to creating a little bit of an optical illusion on whether or not those specific panes are square. I think we should accept his assertion that they are, and we should accept his confession on drafting and focus on giving him direction to go forward.
Yeah.
What appears to be on the table, and brothers and sisters, help me if I state it wrong, is Walter has asked for our direction on 9/9 versus some other solution. I think it's unreasonable not to give some deference to what the applicant wants to do with a given that we're looking at something that is trying its best to be historically appropriate. There's work obviously from multiple periods on this building, as well as pretty much every building in Hudson of any significant age. And the opportunity is laid on the applicant to define a period of significance, but also continue to recognize the history of the building, what goes up. I fear we're overcomplicating this, and I'm not stating my case well. We owe Walter some direction, otherwise we're just hanging him up. And I think he's given us enough information about where he would like to go that we should be able to give him some direction. But fellow commissioners, agree or disagree?
I mean, this is a very thorny one of perhaps the most thorny that we've seen in a long time. I would say that, in my opinion, we don't want to enable fantasy, to Carol's point. I completely agree with that. But do we need to require that it return to one of its previous 2 states? Like, that's really the question before us. How pure are we going to be in our requirement for such an important building?
I agree with you, John, and I'm not sure. I sort of object to the word fantasy. All restorations are a bit of a fantasy.
Let's leave that. Then let's just say, do we require it to be returned to one of its known previous states? That's the question before us. Or do we allow something that may have been appropriate at the time of its creation or shortly thereafter, which is what Walter proposes.
I'm going to
I'd
challenge
like
the
to
word
speak
known.
to what John is
Yeah.
talking about, because I think this is really the essence of what we're considering here and defining our responsibility vis-a-vis this project. I think we do have to make a decision because this building is so significant. It's not just one of the buildings, even on Warren Street. It's a very old, extraordinary building that is a centerpiece of the grid of the city of Hudson. And I think we have to make a determination about period of significance. Do we want to advise Walter to return this to the oldest incarnation, to the most industrial, or the institutional, or the residential? I think it is our job to think about that question. Maybe we don't have enough information or we haven't thought it through, but I do think that we have to take a position on that. As to whether it's 12/12 or 9/9, I think both Carol and Walter have made good points. We have this engraving, which suggests that it should be 12/12. It does have a look that is appropriate to a lunatic asylum. It feels both institutional and rather prison-like. Walter has made a case for buildings of this period and that 9/9 would be an appropriate window configuration for this period. So that's another question that we need to grapple with and make a decision on, I think. So I think the 2 questions are period of significance and whether we feel that we need to tie ourselves to the engraving or whether we feel that Walter's research justifies a different configuration. The biggest question, as Chip said, is what happens to those ground floor windows in the main building, because their size has actually been altered between the 2 periods of significance. So we need to think about which period we're going for those.
Could I just say, we're deciding then on what to do with those windows. Would that be the first step to take? Because I think if we determine they're going to stay the way they are, then it would be more fitting to pretty much keep what's there. If we're going to decide then that those windows have to go back, maybe to the original size, then I think that would dictate that we want to get back to as original a look as we can possibly understand. I don't think we want to do both, that's all.
There's a few
Right, I
things
agree with
going
you.
on. The applicant right now, he could replace all the windows there.
As is.
Like for like, and
Yeah.
that would be the end of the discussion.
Right.
So you're being asked whether, you know that historic features should be altered as little as possible. That's not necessarily the case here because you're already dealing with something that's been altered many times. And so you're going from what exists now, which is the 2/2 with the, sort of the French doors.
Yes.
And I think part of the problem here is that the applicant hasn't just given you one proposal, he's given you several. The issue is whether the alteration that he's proposing is compatible with the historic, nature of the property. And so going from 2/2 to whatever it is that he's proposing, would that be a compatible change? So I just want to keep it in focus that he could replace as is, and whatever he's asking for is going to be an alteration. So then the next criteria, is it compatible?
Yeah, but I think in this case, Victoria, I want to push back a little bit on what you're saying, because I think generally speaking, if this were, a building on Warren Street or Union Street or something, and someone was going to take out their windows and put in new windows, then what you're saying is absolutely right. I think this is a building of such significance and of such age that we do, because we have to look at the historic aspect of the name of this commission and say, it's not just as simple as saying, well, I think the 9/9 looks fine, let's let him do that. I think it needs to be seen in the context of the history of the building and what we want to say. And I agree with Paul. If we say we prefer that he not change the size and shape of those ground floor windows, then we're kind of making a decision that we're going toward the residential period as being the period of significance. And we can take it from there to say what window configuration would be compatible historically with that period.
What is this building going to be used for?
Any suggestions?
Yeah, we
It
just
would make a
opened it up
lovely
that it
city
wasn't clear.
hall if there was a taker for that. I personally think it could be an attractive hotel, an inn. It could be some sort of institutional headquarters. It's got a lot of potential. Unfortunately, it's on a little bit of a landlocked piece of property with about 12 parking spaces attached to it. So, fortunately, there's no parking requirement. So it could be used for anything. I think the main
Thought
thing
if it was going to be like commercial or residential, that might help the conversation, but it's the white box.
I just cannot imagine, other than being hotel, that it would be residential. Just my personal feeling, it's not an appropriate site. I think it's got a lot of issues that would speak against that. And at the same time, it's such a gorgeous building, you wouldn't want to break it up. You'd want to have as consolidated a user as possible take the whole building, I think.
Okay, also, Walter, one more question, just to be clear. When you're talking about 9/9 or 12/12, you're only talking about the middle two rows, because the top row is always going to be a
Correct. Yes, to the top row will always be the same system chopped, right? Like it has a row removed to fit.
Okay.
I would like to say one other thing, which I feel very deeply, since this is getting into it, and I think it's an opportunity. Stop me if I made the Notre Dame speech before, but the beautiful crossing piece at Notre Dame that was lost, that everybody was so upset when there were calls to redesign it, and everyone said that's our cultural patrimony. That was designed by Viollet-le-Duc in the 19th century. And you really, as a commission, I know you do this, you have to look at these as buildings that will be put to a modern use and be attractive to modern tastes. And what might look authentic to you might look like a prison to somebody else. And then I think that raises some interesting issues that aren't, are beyond the purview of this commission, but it touches on property rights, what's appropriate. Last thing I'm going to say is, and I didn't put a presentation to this, but all of these buildings came from Europe through engravings, and most of those engravings were done by architects that didn't bother to show the mullion pattern. They just showed black, chip nose this, and the windows, because the windows are replaceable. These windows will be replaced, so please consider that too. We're offering really great windows, true divided lights, but not so many that it's just prison-like inside. And if you want to argue for exact replication of what it was, then I say, show me what it was yourself in 1818. Show me your research and tell me what you think it was. If these were originally the same windows for the almshouse as the lunatic asylum, okay, I'll take your word for it. Maybe, maybe not, because you won't take my word. So please, I've done my research.
Okay.
I think that, this is such a wonderful building, and it has such age and patina, and the stone walls are quite spectacular. Its position in the town is monumental. I think that I think that the concept of restoring it back to its residential use, and I know that Walter is not suggesting this, I'm just trying to clear the table with it, that I don't really think that I don't think that's as appropriate as the direction that Walter is heading and the owner and the applicant are heading with this. So I think we should just kind of I'm inclined to just take that off the table. I think that clearly these windows were multi-paned, whether they were 6/6 or 9/9 or 12/12. I think that we have the etching, the earliest etching of this building that shows the windows, the window glass relatively small. It's very clear that the windows are 4 lights wide, not 3 lights wide. And I think that it would be very interesting in a measured way to look at the 3rd floor windows and the 2nd floor windows with this 4 light pattern. As Walter has said, these panes cannot be horizontal. They either have to be square, nearly square, or slightly vertical. I think that we have in this photograph of it currently today, with the scale and the texture of the fan light, if we can, and I think we can believe that the size of those pieces of glass and the texture of that is it's valuable to, in a measured way, look at the windows in a divided manner that is compatible and with that fan light and compatible with the early etching. So I'm not arguing that they should be 9/9 or 6/6 or 12/12. I'm suggesting that any of those could possibly work. However, in order for us to select that best option, I think we need to have a little bit more measured. And I understand from Walter saying, hey, just give me some direction and I'll make more measured drawings of this, so that we can really understand the proportion of the glass sizes and so forth.
So just good point. Thanks for the entree, Chip. You see this here? See that? See that size dimension? And given the bad window framing, you see this? 1, 2, 3. So if I take that and I go up, would you accept that?
Yeah, no, understand. I agree with you. And again, I'm not arguing for one or the other. I'm just suggesting we should have a more carefully measured presentation, because as you have in this drawing now, it appears as though the window panes are horizontal, not vertical. And I know that that's not your intention, but that's what it is.
Okay, I'm gonna put a scale on that. I will admit, and please bear with me, in order to do this presentation, I had to draw a lot of windows in all the different patterns. So my intention was to show square windows and to focus on that dimension right there, which you have given me the entree to focus on. And I believe that if you believe this fan light window is original, I maintain that that is the window division right there. And I will do a better drawing, I promise.
Okay.
I think going down the path of the quality of Walter's drawing, I'm finding very unhelpful. We've agreed proportionally on what it's supposed to look like. Can we not then give him an opinion and also recognize that he's put some effort into figuring this out also,
Of course.
And I believe,
I-
Walter, this is what
I-
you're proposing.
I
think
think
that-
you would, it's really basically a simple question for us, right? We all think that institutional is better than residential. We do, regardless, Walter, of your statement that the engraving doesn't represent documentation. It does for purposes of this decision. And I think we just have to decide as a commission, do we think that that 4 wide or 3 wide
Yes.
is materially enough a difference to compel the applicant to do so? And do we accept his recreation of the front windows as slightly larger than the institutional and slightly smaller than the residential? Right? Like those are really the two questions for us. And how much leeway can we give them? That to me
then
is
I would
it.
just ask you to consider, and this is an objective, subjective thing, proportionally that, looking at that, and then looking here again at that to that, is there a case that can be made that this fan light is the original and that these windows are in proportion, whereas these windows seem to me, in addition to be prison-like, out of proportion? That's it. Thanks.
Well, I
But
think
this is not the aesthetics committee.
Chips-
This is the historic preservation commission. That's the thing. Like maybe it is, or maybe it's not, but that's how the building was. I mean, I would be inclined to go either direction if you just want to know where I am. Like I could, if there was a passion, if the commission was passionate that we have to preserve as much of what we know, because that's why we ask for historical photographs and images, that we should preserve it in that way, that would work. The other thing is we want the building to be, Walter is, I believe, compellingly convincing when we said we want the building to be adopted and used and restored and not decaying at the end of our block. So I could probably go either way on this, and that's just, then I'll turn it back to Chip, frankly.
Well
Or
said.
I'm sorry,
Miranda?
Yeah, I think Chip gave us a couple of very helpful parameters in here. I think we can all agree that we do want to go to the earlier 19th century scale proportion approach of this building as opposed to the late 19th century residential version. So that puts us within the frame of what Walter has proposed. And I think then it becomes a question of proportionality. Walter has made a case that there are a lot of buildings from this period that would have 9/9 windows, that they're graceful, that they allow more light, that they're the technology of the time, et cetera, et cetera. There's an engraving that shows this as an institutional building with smaller lights. And my personal opinion is that the 9/9 is more graceful, is appropriate to the period. And I think Chip's comment about the fan window is a terrific one. I don't know that that window is actually original, but I think it was, a recreation of an original window. And I think that for me personally, the 9/9 is, if you look at the number of fans in there, it's proportionate with the style of the fan window. So I would be willing to go with the 9/9.
Miranda, that was very well stated and better than I could. I agree with what you said. I also would support the 9/9.
Same here.
And Hugh?
Mhm.
John?
What did Chip say?
Paul's our historian. Does he have a comment?
What do Paul and Chip say?
Actually, I just stepped away. I thought there was some theory years ago that the almshouse and the courthouse sort of flanked this long avenue. And I just stepped away to see if I could find an earlier picture of what the courthouse would look like at this period. I'm going to agree with what I just heard, that I like the look of the 9/9, but as I said, I really wanted to see maybe if there was something that an earlier courthouse view could have provided us.
Okay. I just coming back on that, I think that that both would be appropriate. That we don't have a time machine. We're dependent on sketches of a moment in time there, and we found sometimes they're not even necessarily accurate, but we have two options that would be appropriate. The 9/9 is a hell of a lot nicer to look at and less grim, and I think offers many advantages over the 12/12. But any other thoughts or comments? I don't know how to do this unless we take a bit of a straw vote and give Walter some direction. Otherwise, we're not moving the P forward, and that's kind of not fair.
I think we are moving the P forward, though, Phil. I think that we have made some important decisions, and I think that we have made some clear direction to Walter and the applicant. I think that I think that there is still some measured discovery that needs to be made here. And no disrespect for a second to Walter. As he has stated, the detailed site measurements of this building, he has not been able to take yet. And so that exact spacing of the fan light, we don't know what that is. The exact free glass area of these of the windows, I don't know that it's been accurately depicted, because when we look at Walter's very detailed window schedule on A600, it doesn't seem to be consistent with the concept of having a square or vertical pane. I think the other thing, and correct, that may be missing on that schedule is, I don't know that there's an accurate depiction on that window schedule of the first floor windows that are shown here now in the center section. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I wanted to ask Walter about that window schedule and that dimension. I think that is about 7 feet and change on type 1.
Yeah.
That window, which is 7 feet and change. Is that window number 1? It's not indicated on your elevation as window number 1. Those center windows frequently are, and maybe they're just mislabeled in the drawing, but
I can hardly read this, but it's this window here. It should be. What does that say? Does that say 1?
it looks like it's 3, but
Right.
I think that this clarity is something that the commission should have in going forward with making the precise selection of
There are
6
four
or not.
windows, not counting the Muntins. So yes, I can send you exact measurements. These were taken, but I'll take them again. Yeah.
Do you have an exact measurement of the fan light?
I'm going to go with these measurements that I'm showing here, but I'm going to be totally honest and say I've not physically been up in that attic to inspect it. This was taken by trying to work with the dimensions we had with a photograph. So it's as close. Again, Chip, this is not a construction set. This is not a proposal to build these physical windows. This is a proposal to your committee to give us permission to take this direction using approximately these proportions. And I'm going to verify, I disagree with you vehemently. Type 1 has got to be rectangular because the vertical is 7 feet and the horizontal is 3.5. All right. So it's roughly square. I'm sorry, excuse.
Yeah.
These all should be, except maybe for type 3 square.
Yeah.
But you know, I'll go back and do all of that. But again, just to be clear about this, you know, if it's 3 feet 6.5 inches, does that materially affect this commission because I've never seen that degree of specificity in all my days watching these hearings. I will go whatever direction you guys want, but let's get a clear idea. 12 over 12, you got to do it. 9 over 9, forget it. 2 over 2, don't even think about it. Give us the direction. We'll get a window proposal from a company and bring it back.
I agree with Walter's comments. I understand that in principle, it's absurd not to consider more specificity when there is, but I also think it's absurd to require specificity at a level that is going to have minimal impact on the decision that we're taking right now, or at least in my humble or not very humble opinion. I'd really like to move this project forward. I'm going to make a motion that we give the applicant or Walter specifically representing the application direction to proceed as he is recommending in his sketches with a 9 over 9 solution. If I've misstated that, whatever. Would I have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you very much, Paul. By voice and hand, how many in favor?
Can I
Aye.
just say one quick thing, which is that the page that we're looking at is talking about double glazed windows.
I understand that's a mistake, Miranda, and we've
Told
covered
that
it.
it's
That
glazed,
was at the
okay.
time the proposal, but now we've reconsidered that and it's single.
I'm
glaze.
sorry, that's been covered and
Great.
covered.
Okay, all right.
Could we continue? Let me do it by voice.
Excuse me, I just want one clarification. Are you giving the applicant full unqualified approval of the 6 over 6 window and not requiring the applicant to return with more detailed drawings?
No. He asked for general direction and he already agreed to return with more detail.
Okay, very good. All right, very good.
It was 9 over 9.
And
right?
it's
That's
9
correct.
over
It was
9.
not
Not
6
six,
over
yeah, it's
6.
9 over 9.
May I have by voice on that motion?
I have another
Hugh?
question though.
Okay.
We offer in the same motion, are you allowing him to resize? I assume you're allowing him to resize the first floor windows in the center of the facade. And are you also allowing him to replace the fan window?
No, on the fan. I'm not clear on resizing, John. Give me a comment on that.
That's what we discussed before. Like he's shrinking the windows that used to go out onto the porch, not back to the institutional grade sizing, but to something in between. That's what Chip pointed out for us.
Walter, is that correct?
Yes, so if you see my little hand here on the screen, that is the level of the current windows. They go to the floor. We'd like to raise them up off the floor, but leave them long. And again, I'm afraid to say anything about how nice it looks, so I won't make any aesthetic comments.
Well,
So yes,
if-
we're giving the applicant permission to change the openings.
I just need to make a remark about the problem that sets up for the proportion of the glass, because we have on the second floor, we have 9 over 9, and on the first floor, we have 9 over 9. And when you stretch the first floor and keep them 9 over 9, the proportion of the glass changes.
Okay.
That's right.
All of the examples that Walter brought forward from historically and from overseas, there's a consistency of size of pane from floor to floor, not just in its width, but also in their vertical dimension.
Okay.
So you would see, if you go back to Virginia, for instance, Walter.
Have to disagree, right there it is. You see that? Really vertical, less vertical, maybe even horizontal, Chip. I mean, please, that they did that. It's a Palladian thing. You as it goes up, it gets smaller. It's a visual trick. It's very sophisticated. It's not just make them all the same. Look, this is the real deal. Anyway, sorry.
Okay. I'm not sure my motion is clear. I can try to restate something, but I'd like us to come and opine on something to get this going.
And this is not for C of A. This is just to give him direction to come
It is
back.
just to give the applicant some direction, and I'll go back again. We're agreeing essentially on 9/9, and where is not relevant? Can we do that? If you don't like my motion, make one.
Do you have a second?
I did, Paul Barrett.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
Aye.
Pardon? Who said no?
No one.
Good.
I'm not sure I understand the motion. I'm sorry to be stupid about this, but are we saying that we're just giving general direction and Walter needs to come back with something specific? Or could we approve this with a contingency that we need more specific measurements?
It's general direction. He can't do a thing with, he needs a C of A.
Right, I know. So
Just ain't to
where
C of
are
A.
we in the direction? Where are we between no C of A and C of A? Where are we on that?
Probably one meeting away. But this will give him an opportunity to do any other specifications he wants and clarify the drawings if he wants to, et cetera, et cetera. But in
So-
principle, we're focusing on using what he has recommended.
So this is very frustrating to me because I don't want to say the drawings are 100% accurate and I don't want to say they're inaccurate. It's the fine graining of this, the specificity. I don't understand that. It either is going to work for 9/9 and the window's 2 inches wider, or it's not. I mean,
Walter,
other
you're
words-
getting what you want. Without due respect, you're getting what you want. Everyone is supportive of the 9/9. Chip just wants actual specifications for the windows, but no one's going to change it back to 12/12 upon viewing those, right? Like, I think
misunderstood. I'm sorry.
that is, I think you've won the day. Stop fighting.
And I think we could use a little more specificity on the front door so you can really get approval. what
For
you want.
sure.
That'll
sure,
come
that's
later. Yeah.
Because there's not so much on that.
But so the front door is not part of this. It's just the windows then.
He's
The
going
front
to
door
come.
was a temperature take.
He's going to come back on the front door with some more information.
Okay.
Cool? Okay. That's my story. I would like
That was easy.
then to, piece of cake. I'd like to adjourn the, motion to adjourn the meeting, and John, John Schobel.
Yeah,
were you
Jeremy
able to reach out-
texted me. He texted me and said that he'd only reserved until 11:30.
Right?
So, if he said, hold on. Okay, so yeah, he was only here until 11:30, so we'll have to do him the next time, I guess, right?
Okay, I'm sorry about that, John. We've had, he's a pretty busy bee. We had tried to schedule once before as well, but we'll do it next time. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Make that motion.
John, second, all in favor?
Aye.
So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very
Thank you.
much.
Bye-bye.
It's a beautiful day outside. Thank you, Walter, for hanging in. Cheers.